One of the best UFO cases that I have ever heard of, an amazing story. I remember reading Charles Hickson's account of what happened. He was the other witness who unfortunately has now passed away. Some years ago, I was having difficulty because his book is out of print. It's very difficult to find. You can find it on eBay for like $200 or more. And until recently, and now it's back in print, thanks to my friend Phil Mantle from the UK. He's republishing it now. It's called Incident at Pascagoula, right? Contact at Pascagoula. But anyway, and even more intriguing details have now been brought forward by our next speaker, because Calvin Parker was right there at the right hand of Charles Hickson that night. The two of them were fishing together on the west bank of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi when an amazing thing happened beyond belief that Calvin is going to bring us this morning. And this is what Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the world's foremost UFO expert of his time, and interviewed both Calvin and Charlie after the incident. And this is what he said. He said that he concluded that the men were absolutely honest. They have had a fantastic experience. So I mentioned earlier that I consider this to be one of the few smoking guns, true smoking guns of UFO evidence. So we're very proud to have with us in one of his very few public appearances. Calvin doesn't appear in public much, so we are very thankful that he came all the way to South Texas today to speak to us. Ladies and gentlemen, a big applause for Mr. Calvin Parker.
It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here. I have been treated so well by the people here and the staff and the general public. So it's quite an honor for me to be here speaking tonight. This happened, tell you a little bit about myself. This happened in October the 11th of 1973. And a friend of mine and me wanted to go fishing where it really started. But I was born in November the 2nd, 1954, right here in the great state of Texas. And I love it here. I love the people here, and I want to move back so bad. That's just not too good at fishing in the desert. But anyhow, I was born in '54 here in Seminole, Texas. I lived here most all my life, and I've graduated. Matter of fact, I hadn't been too long moving for Corpus Christi on a job, and I moved back to Mississippi, and I've really had a hard time with this through the years, dealing with it and all, because this is something when you're in the public eye, you really didn't want to talk about, especially if you had a job. My one ambition in life was to get married, have children, have grandchildren, retire and fish the rest of my life. Well, that's just kind of went backwards for me. This is kind of who I am, and when I got together to write this book, I told the publisher, when you write this book, I said, I'm not an educated man, maybe a ninth grade. I don't want you to change the spelling in this book, even though I can't spell. I don't want you to punctuate this book, because I don't know where the periods and the question marks go. But you put it in my language, because this is what I understand. I don't want nothing changed. I've seen so many experiences like this that have been changed through the years, and it's just not doing them right. It's not being honest to yourself or what's going on. I've actually been offered movie deals and documentaries, and I'll read over the screenplay or something, and no, we're not going to do this. Well, we can't do it unless we blow it up, make some big Hollywood deal out of it. Well, that's fine with me. You're not going to blow nothing with my name on it up. But in October 11th of 1973, I took my first job. I was working in the oil field. So I had called a friend of mine, which is Charlie Hickson. He's a good deal older up. said, look, I'm fixing to get married in November. I need a job where I can be home some. I work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's no fun to start a new marriage doing that. Of course, if I knew what I knew now, I'd stayed working. But anyhow, he said, well, son, come on down. I'll give you a job at the shipyard here. We need a ship fitter. Can you weld? Oh, yeah, I'm a good liar. Yeah, I can weld. I'll come on down. I'll go to work for you. And so I drove down. He rented me an apartment in his house, $50 a week, which now I see it was a little steep. But anyhow, we got up the next morning and went to work. My first day on the job, and he told me, he said, let's go fishing when we get off. I thought, well, you know, that sounds like a good idea. Well, just a little history going back with Charlie. Charlie was a friend of my father's, and they used to fish all the time, and they would take us kids with them. He had a son and 2 sons and a couple of daughters, and we'd all go fishing together and have fun. He really was not a friend of mine. He was more of a mentor, I guess is what you would call it. So we decided to go fishing when we got off work. It was on October the 11th. It was hot for a October day. So we got off. We got in my car. We drove to his house. I didn't have my fishing equipment with me. And I said, Charlie, I don't even have no fishing equipment here. He said, you can use some of mine. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, you know, a man's fishing equipment is sacred. I do not want to use yours. He said, no, let's use it, let's go. Well, that hexed me right to start with. So we picked it up. I'd been better off just not going. We picked the equipment up. We drove about a 15-minute ride to an old abandoned shipyard. Well, when we pulled up on the shipyard, it had been shut down for a pretty good while, and I seen some no trespassing signs. And again, that should have been another thing. Karma comes and gets you every time. I said, Charlie, there's no trespassing signs here. What do we do? Oh, I fished here many a times. I thought, I hope he's not lying. But we walked on down. It took us about 15 minutes to get to the pier where we fished, because there was a lot of debris up that had washed in. And I was thinking, boy, these people's messy, but what happened? The tide come in, washed the debris in, and then when it went out, it left it. So we sat on the pier and we got baited up, and I was looking across the river at an old ship over there that was made out of steel. And I was thinking to myself, now how in the world does something made out of steel float? And that always amazed me. And about that time I seen blue lights coming from behind, like a patrol car. You know, the lights was just flashing out across over the water in the ship. And I thought, man, we fixed to go to jail for trespassing, and this isn't gonna be the place to be. So I stood up and turned around and said, Charlie, look, they're back here to get us now. We're going to jail, in a jokingly manner. So he stood up and turned around, and gosh, it was about the blindedest light you ever seen in your life just appeared then. It was the brightest light I have ever seen to be able to walk out through the woods in. So we both stood up at the same time, and you could make out, just looking, you could make out 3 bulky looking figures coming toward us. We didn't understand what they were then, and there wasn't nowhere to run. It was water over here on this side and water on that side, and it had debris in the water. So you didn't really have a choice. We just stood there, and it wasn't but just a second these things appeared on us. So 2 of them got a hold of Charlie by the arm, and 1 of them got a hold of myself. And immediately when they got a hold of me, I felt a puncture, like a shot or something. And it kind of relaxed me. I was getting pretty scared by then. But then when I felt this thing grab me by the arm and that little puncture, I felt a little bit relaxed about it. They floated us. They picked us up, levitated us. Now, from this point on, I've lost Charlie. I don't know where he went. but I was levitated up probably a couple of foot, and we floated across the top of this marsh grass and all. And it was effortless. You'd think it would break our arm, but it didn't. And we went into a craft, and I remember being laid back and looking around to see where this bright light was coming from, because I've never seen a bright like that bright that was just on y'all at one time. And I couldn't really turn my head or move my body or anything, but I was just rolling my eyes and looking. It looked like it was coming out of the walls. There wasn't no light fixtures in there. It was just illuminating out of the walls. So he carried me on. He took me in, and we made a little left turn and a right turn, and he put me in a room and laid me on a table at about a 16-degree angle about like that. And I was laying on my back and looking up, and out of the ceiling comes something about like a deck of cards. Well, when this thing got down about a foot from my face, it stopped. And the only noise I heard right then was a click. Then it went to the side of my head and clicked. And I couldn't tell that it was anything tied to it. It just came down. And it went around. It clicked 4 times. And then you looked and it shot back up in the ceiling. So I thought, well, maybe, they shoot me or something. This might be the way to go here. And I noticed this big ugly thing that brought me in, robotic looking creature, and he had crab-like hands, like he had mittens on. And he kind of backed up out of the way, and I kind of was able to roll my head a little bit, and this, I call it a female. Whether it was or not, I don't know. But kind of how a male consents a female and a female consents a male. But it came out, and it wasn't as ugly as this one that brought me in. But, she was still scary looking for a woman. I've been to Bourbon Street and experienced the same thing. That gets pretty scary. And she come over, and I didn't know what was fixing to happen. I didn't know if what she was going to do, but she might have been a doctor for all I know, or in control of everything. She grabbed me by the cheek and pinched me, and I thought, well, my grandmother don't even do that. Then she grabbed me by the jaw, and she run these 2 fingers down, and right in the back of your throat, there's a little thing that hangs down. I don't know what they call it, but mine swelled up pretty bad after that. She reached down under it and went up into my nasal cavity, and I was choking. And she seen it, and I was actually thinking pretty bad thoughts right then, but I couldn't move or do anything. And automatically, she knew she was hurting me. And through telepathically, I watched to see if her mouth moved. She had a mouth and nose and eyes just kind of like we did, except her eyes a little squinty, I thought, I wonder what she's doing to myself, but I was in so much pain, and then she telepathically to me, we're not going to hurt you. Don't worry. Don't be concerned. Well, I was worried. I was hurting. I was choking to death. I was bleeding. And I thought, well, you be. I don't like this. But she got her point across, and she kind of backed off. And I thought, well, that's good. She's not going to hurt me. She got her point across. Maybe she'll let me go. Then she made a little mumbling right here. She's like I can't make that noise. But anyhow, then that's when that big ugly one come by. I said, well, she might be not going to be hurt me, but he is. He big old ugly thing, a robot. He moved mechanically looking. You know how you see one of them, and they just kind of move like a machine. This is the way this thing moved. Well, he come over and he grabbed me by the arm again, and automatically I heard a noise like a puff of air, and I felt an injection going back in my arm. And that's when I kind of settled down again. I guess he drugged me up and all. Well, I kind of settled down there for a minute. Well, she come in, and did a few more little things, just kind of looked around and felt of my skin and things. And her fingers was normal, not like the other creature, except they was a little longer. Her two middle fingers was longer. So she got through and she backed up and he grabbed us and he floated me back out to the door and put me out at the same spot that I was in, except I was facing the river with my hands strung out like that, and I was paralyzed. And that's when I heard the guy that was with me, Charlie Hicks, and he said, son, you okay? And I was thinking, well, hell no, I'm not all right, you know. Look what we've been through. But I did, I stood up. Well, he was on the ground. I didn't think he was okay either, but he jumped up like a little jackrabbit, and we turned around and looked. And when we looked at this craft, the bright light just automatically went off, and what that was the door closing, because the lights was coming from the door there. So when the door closed, this thing picked up off the ground a little bit, and it just made a little zipping noise and shot straight up into the air. Well, by then, you know, it was too late to run or get away or anything. So Charlie and I sat down on the pier there and talked about what we were going to do, which was nothing. I said, Charlie, you know, I don't want to talk about this. This didn't happen to me. I wasn't there. It didn't happen. Well, we got to tell somebody. I said, not that I was there, you don't. So I knew the danger was over, you know, when this thing left, and I was thankful. I thanked the good Lord. I said, Lord Jesus, thank you so much for saving me, but now what are we going to do? So we talked about it a few minutes, and he was determined to call somebody and tell them. So we went to get back in my car, and I noticed I had a brand new little car I just bought. It had 20,000 miles on it. Of course, back then when you bought a car and it had 20,000 miles on it, it's like 400,000 now, because they was wore out at 80. But the windows was shattered on the passenger side that was facing the craft. Now the craft parallel with the car was probably 50 yards out that way. And I don't know what shattered the windows over there. It must have been the noise or something. But anyhow, we got in the car. I tried to crank it. It like it never did crank. I don't know why, but that was the best battery I've ever seen in my life, because I cranked on it and cranked on it. It never went down. And then after that, I noticed when, and this is on down the road, but I noticed it was magnetic. The car was. You could throw a handful of paper clips on there and they would stick to the car. And I actually still have the car. It's over at my brother-in-law's house. But anyhow, we got in the car, we got it cranked, we left, and I was going home. And I told Charlie, you know, I'm kind of concerned because I watched these movies with these Apollo astronauts coming down. First thing they do is quarantine them. They lock them up for 7 days. They don't even let their family see them. I said, Charlie, I'm kind of worried. Maybe we don't need to go around nobody or nothing. We might kill them all off. He said, oh, we'll take care of that tomorrow. I said, I don't think that's a good idea now. He said, well, pull up over here at the store. Well, in the state of Mississippi, there's blue laws. So you don't go in a store after 6 or 7 o'clock on a, you know, at night, and they do that to keep everybody from buying beer or anything else. But there was a payphone. For those of you who don't know what it is, it hangs on the wall. And you put a dime in that thing, and you make a phone call, because that's all we had back then. Somebody asked me, well, why didn't you call when you left? You could have got your cell phone, took pictures, and called. I said, what is a cell phone? You know, my first cell phone bill was $800. They took it away from me. So anyhow, we scratched under the seat and found a dime, put a dime in there. He made a phone call. Well, I heard him talking. Well, y'all got to promise not to laugh, but I got something to tell you. Actually, he called Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi. And they told him, well, look, we don't deal with things like this anymore. We don't have the means to deal with this. Y'all have to call your local law enforcement. Well, he said, okay. Well, he came back and got another wanting another dime, so we got out, looked under the seat and everywhere else and found a dime. He went back and I was just listening to him. And what does he do? He calls the local sheriff department. What do they say? Well, you boys stay right there, I'll be there. Sure enough, 10 minutes they showed up. They opened the door, they told me, they said, let me see your ID. They checked my ID. They said, step out of the car, son. So I stepped out, he said, stand on one foot, hold your head back, touch your nose, close your eyes. I said, man, I can't do that sober, much less if I've been drinking or something. But I hadn't been drinking. So I did this little sobriety test. And Charlie's sitting over there like a big lug. They didn't even make him get out of the car right then. He said, oh, you good enough to drive. Can you walk this line? I said, I just stood up, jumped up and down on one foot, bent my head back and touched my nose and closed my eyes and counted backwards. Yeah, I can drive. So we followed them to the sheriff department, which was probably 10 minutes away. When we got to the sheriff department, they immediately separated us and put us into separate rooms and started interrogating us. I didn't know I had all these pictures on here. Let me get to them. Anyhow, now I'm caught up with it. If y'all missed something, I'll go back. But the sheriff was Fred Diamond. So they put us all into the separate rooms and interrogated us. Then what we didn't know, they had a tape recorder hid in another room, and they brought us into the same room and they listened to us talk. And that's where the secret tape come in. And we had no idea this tape was in there. And they just captured it briefly here. And this is the one thing that convinced the sheriff department that we was here. Like Charlie started, Calvin, are you okay, Hoss? Tell you, I'm scared to death is what I said. We need to get over there and let me tell Blanche, that was Charlie's wife. I'm telling you, man, that's something, I'll scare you damn near to death. And it did, you know, Jesus Christ, that's Charlie. Of course, you hear about something like this happening, but you don't believe it. Well, actually, I'd never heard about nobody getting abducted, because up until then, I had no idea what a UFO was or an abduction was. Didn't really want to know. You know, I figured it was just some kind of science fiction something. And the first thing that went through my mind when this happened, they have these major shipyards down there, and I thought they might be experimenting with some kind of aircraft or something that they did. But come to find out later, it wasn't. I figured two rednecks just got in there gonna have some fun. I know I would if I could build one and fly it. I'd go out and I'd grab everybody I could. So anyhow, I figured that just somebody wanted to have a little fun and all, but that wasn't true. So that's really what convinced the sheriff department that something was going on. Well, I expressed my concerns to them, and they said, y'all go home. Well, the next day, little did we went home, we drove home, and to be honest, I still felt like I was endangering other people, and I didn't want to do that. So when I got home, there was a gallon of bleach sitting on the bathtub. I pulled all my clothes off, my shoes and everything, put them in a paper bag, and then got in and poured that bleach over my head and rubbed it in and washed it off. And that's how I was concerned, how much I was concerned for somebody else. My welfare, I really didn't care. Even though I was scared, and I'll tell you, I was scared to death. I didn't want to get nobody else into a bad situation. So when I did that, we got up the next morning. I didn't sleep too good that night. So when I got up, Charlie was sitting there talking to his wife, and we decided to go into, get up and go on into work. Well, when we got to work, there was more cars at the shipyard than what I ever thought. I was thinking, now where did all these cars come from? And we got onto the field out to the workstation where we was working, and they called us into the office. And I was wondering, now, they know something's up. I don't know how, but they know. Because Charlie and I agreed not to tell nobody, and this is where we had a fallout. I didn't speak to him for years over this. So we agreed not to mention this to nobody. And come to find out, he didn't. Back in that day, everybody was nosy, staying at home. And they had scanners in their house so they could ease in on everybody else's business. They'd listen to the police department, the fire department. If you did something, everybody knew about it before you. We had party lines. You know, your phone would ring and you'd pick it up, answer it, then you'd hear 7 more clicks, 7 more people pick up, listen in on the party line. And that was the good old days. But anyhow, that's how they found out through a scanner. They called us into the office and they said, we can't conduct business here today. And I played dummy. I said, well, why not? They said, the media, what happened to y'all? I said, nothing happened to me. Maybe did Charlie, I don't know what went on. Nothing happened to me though. So Charlie broke down like a little titty baby and he started crying out and telling them everything. I said, Charlie, I thought you was a vet from Korea. I thought you brave and could keep a secret. I'm glad they didn't catch you over there. You told them everything. So anyhow, we went through that discussion right there in front of them. And they said, we got to get y'all out of here. You go outside and work outside, the people's gonna talk to you, and they was right. You come in here, the phones is ringing, we can't talk to you. We have an attorney. Y'all talk to him, get a press release worked up, and we're gonna let him give a press release. So during talking to this attorney, he was asking me questions. I told him just talk to Charlie, I didn't know anything. But the one thing that I'm concerned about, I said, I'm afraid old Charlie's gonna contaminate all of us, so we might ought to go get checked for bacteria or radiation or something. So he gave his little press release, and then all of a sudden, here come a deputy sheriff in a patrol car, and they picked us up, loaded both of us up in that attorney, and they took us to Singing River Hospital. They did extensive blood work. They checked us for different things. They checked my arm for the puncture marks. They checked down my throat when my little hangy thing back there was swelled up. I couldn't even talk because it was so sore when it got swollen. Well, all that was documented and they put it down. And then I expressed the concerns about radiation. They called Keesler Air Force Base and they said, y'all go straight to Keesler. So this deputy drove us to Keesler, lights on, because he thought he was dying too. By then I had him convinced we was exposed for radiation. I said, man, you're a goner. You and your family are dead. He said, well, we got to get y'all checked. So we went, they flagged us right on through Keesler, and when we got there, even scarier, 6 or 7 people had on hazmat suits, and they walking around with little things, and they got me out, and I started wearing. And they checked me, and I was so glad to hear him say, y'all clear. I said, oh, good. He said, but they do want to see y'all in the back. I said, oh, no. So we went, they escorted us down a long hallway. And the minutes are actually in the book that I wrote from the meeting at Keesler Air Force Base. They took us back, they interrogated us, they talked to us, but they was really nice to us. And, you know, tried to get all the information they could from being nice, and you get more like that than you do by beating somebody. So we got back to, we got through there, and they let us go. And I was gonna go home, so they drove us back to the shipyard. And that's when Dr. Heineck and Dr. Harder was there. Dr. Heineck is a very serious guy. when he looks at you, you just feel that he's looking through you. So he took us in there and he questioned us. Dr. Harder examined us. They took Charlie back, Dr. Harder did, while Heinrich talked to me. And he told me when he got through, he said, just, if you would, can you stay around 2 or 3 more days? I didn't tell him, but I was really planning on leaving, but I was afraid to leave because I heard these stories about different things. So I did stay around 2 or 3 days. Heinrich's conclusion was, you know, if these men are lying, they should be in Hollywood because they would be some of the best actors there. So anyhow, Harder tried to hypnotize us. Now, he tried to hypnotize me, whether he did or not, I don't know. I don't think he did, because I was too scared to be hypnotized. So they turned us loose, and the first thing I did, I wanted to get back home, because I knew my family was there, and I didn't know what they knew. But to be honest with you, I never told my family nothing up until I wrote this book last July. Never told my friends anything up until I did this book last July. And the reason I did this book is because I just felt like I owed an explanation to a lot of the people that lived around me that tried to hide me from the press and all. So that's the reason the book come out. The cover on the book was actually took from this picture right here that I got. I just took the hands down, took my picture of me at a younger place and did the cover. But anyhow, this led into a lot more different things. This is Keesler Air Force Base where they interrogated us. This is the actual minutes of the people that was at the meeting at Keesler, and all this is in the book, some of the stuff I put in the book. Of course, this just tells us that we didn't kill everybody, no radiation. The aftermath was worse than the abduction. I gotta tell you, I went through living hell on the aftermath of all this. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to talk about it, I didn't want to tell nobody. And what makes it easier today is this book did an outline for me to be able to talk about it. And if you notice, I'll try to add a little bit of humor in, because if I didn't, I'd sit up here and cry like a baby. I mean, that's just the way that it is. So anyhow, time progressed on. Then in 1993, I went fishing one night, and I told my wife, I'm going fishing. I said, I'm going to be back before dark, because there's usually bad things happen to me at night. So I will be back before dark. Well, she made me a lunch, and I put my lunch in the boat. 6-mile trip to the island. I left and went to the island, and I was sitting there getting ready to eat my lunch. And this is about 11 o'clock in the daytime. Well, the next morning at 3 o'clock a.m., and the reason I know it was that way, because when I got back to the truck, it's a 30-minute run, I woke up, and I figured I just fell asleep, and I was out, just fishing and fell asleep and didn't eat my lunch. So when I got into the truck, I looked, it was 3 o'clock, and I had all this missing time coming up. Well, I knew I had to go home and explain to my wife where I'd been. And I said, this isn't gonna be easy, because I don't know where I've been. So she said, well, where you been? I've been worried to death about you. Oh, I've been with another woman over there. I knew if I told her something like that, she wouldn't believe me, she'd just cut up and think I stayed out all night fishing. I said, yeah, I've been off drinking in a bar with another woman, or whatever you want to believe. Well, the next morning, I got a friend that come by. I said, something's bothering me. I said, I've got a lot of missing time in here. I don't know where I was or what I was doing. Oh, he said, I know somebody that's wrote a book. I said, who is that? He said, Bud Hopkins wrote a book on missing time. I said, who in the world is Bud Hopkins? I didn't keep up with all this stuff back then. I didn't know who. He said, well, he wrote the book on missing time. That's who he is. He said, let's go see him. I said, well, where is he? He's in Tampa, Florida. That's 12 hours from the house. I said, well, let's go. We loaded up and we drove over. I said, now I'm not going in there to talk to this man. If you want me to talk to him, you tell him to, that I'm out here in the car waiting on him, and he can come out here and see me, because he don't know me from nobody, and he's gonna think you're crazy. So he went and told Bud who I was, and surprisingly to me, Bud knew my name, he knew my history, he knew what was going on. He said, I want to talk to this man. Y'all go to my motel room and wait for me there. I'll be there in 35, 40 minutes. Sure enough, it wasn't long. Bud showed up, opened his own door and come on in. We was sitting there waiting on him. Well, I was talking to Bud. He was visiting. He asked how I'd been, wanted to know where I'd been. And he said, I told him about the missing time. He said, let me hypnotize you. I said, I'm not for sure about that, Bud. He said, no, I think it will help you. Let me hypnotize you. I said, well, here's the deal now. Don't you put anything in my head or take anything out that don't belong there. I said, I got this man right here that's gonna stand here with this ball bat. And if you make me do like they do in Las Vegas, get up and jump up and down that like an idiot and pull my clothes off in front of everybody, he's gonna beat you with it. And Bud, he's real recluse kind of, he's real quiet. He says, I'm not gonna do none of that. I said, I hope not. You won't live until I wake up and finish it. So apparently he hypnotized me. And I didn't even realize he put a post-hypnotic suggestion in my head that I wouldn't remember none of this till it was time to remember it. So I didn't remember none of it because I never thought it was time. Well, later on, last year, about April, I guess, when we went to that wake of a neighbor of mine, I signed a register. Well, when I signed a register, for some reason, people recognized my name. Now, why after 45 years would somebody recognize my name? But I had been living around there all my life, too. So they said, are you the Calvin Parker? I said, well, I guess that's what they named me. He said, well, I want to talk to you about what happened to you and Charlie. I thought, oh no, I don't want to talk about this. I said, look, to get out of it, and I was being real honest with him, I said, let's show this man's family some respect. He's laying in there dead, you want to talk about UFOs. I said, that's not nice of you. I said, we're gonna go and I'll talk to you later. So we left, I told my wife, let's go, and when we left, she said, why don't you write a book? You never talked to me about it. You never talked to your friends about it. You never talked to your family about it. I said, we all want to know about it. Will you write a book? And I said, I don't have the education to write a book. I can't spell my own name right sometimes, much less everybody else's. She said, no, write a book. I said, if I can find a ghostwriter, I will. I knew right then I wasn't going to hunt a ghostwriter. I was trying to put her off so she wouldn't bother me no more about a dang book. Well, of all things, the next day, Philip Mantell from the UK called, and he owns a little small publishing company, and he wanted to talk to me on an unrelated matter than this book. I answered the phone, and he got started in. He said, didn't Charlie write a book? Tell me what you know. I said, I've never read the book. I said, this book, actually part of it belongs to me. I've got a contract with Charlie. I said, but I've never read it. I never got $1 off of it. It's cost me money to even, have this thing around. He said, well, look, why hadn't you wrote a book? I said, because everybody changes every word that you say in it. The press changes things. Everybody else changes things. I don't want to go through all this, and I don't have the education to write a book. He said, well, let me call you back in about a week. So I figured he'd be over it. So about a week he called me back. He said, Calvin. I said, yeah, who is this? He said, Philip. I said, I don't know Philip. I said, I don't want to do a book, Philip. It's just plain and simple. He said, listen to me. He said, you told me the press changes everything you say and everybody else does. Do a book. It's your legacy. Put down in there the way that what happened and the way that you really feel. And it really made a little bit of sense to me then. So I said, okay. I'll do a book under one condition, under certain conditions. Number one, you don't correct a misspelled word in there. And I regret that. I said, you don't repunctuate or change any of my language in this book. I kind of regret that too. I didn't know I was such a bad speller until this come out and people started going on Facebook and writing this old dirty stuff about my spelling. But they blamed it on the publisher, and I actually they said that's the publisher's job to straighten all that out. I said, you know, you're right, it was. But I told him not to do his job, to leave this book the way that it is. This book is in my language, it's the way that I want it, and it's what happened. I don't want it changed. And that's why Philip didn't go in and change the book. So in his defense, you know, if y'all find a misspelled word in the book, it's me. The only thing that he changed in there, I wrote in the back how I fried a bologna sandwich up for my lunch one day. He said a blondie sandwich. Now, I've never had a blondie sandwich, but anyhow, he changed that, but that's the kind of sandwiches they eat in the UK. So, but anyhow, I sat down. He said, how long will it take you to do this? He said, it'll take at least 3 or 4 years. I said, man, I ain't gonna live that long. You're crazy. I said, if I can read a book in a week, and I said, a big book in 2 weeks, I can write this thing in 2 weeks. He said, oh no, nobody can do that. I said, I've lived it for 45 years. I know what I want to say. So I told my wife, I said, I'm going to the houseboat. I'm going to lock myself up in my room over there. Don't tell nobody where I am. Don't call me on the phone because I'm not answering and I'm turning it off. But if you don't mind, about once a day, cook me a little something, bring me a plate in the evening and something to drink. So she did that, and nobody disturbed me, and I sat in there day and night, and I went at this book. You'd think I was Steven Spielberg the way I was writing. If I had just got it all correct, I mean, I did what happened, got that part correct, but it is some pretty bad grammar at times in there, and punctuation. You know, I'm a Mississippi uneducated redneck, so I wrote it in Mississippi uneducated redneck. But people tell me, we understand this. It's like you sitting in the room reading it to us or telling us a story, and that made me feel good. But anyhow, when I was halfway through the book, Philip Mantle called, and I did take a call from him, and he said, look, you said that Bud Hopkins hypnotized you. I said, yeah. He said, well, Bud is dead, but I was able to find the original tape from Dr. Jacobs. He had the original tape and he sent it to me. And he said, I've wrote down everything in here and I'm gonna send you a copy of the original tape. Well, I was surprised because I didn't think there was nothing on it. I started reading some of this and I got out and I told my wife, I said, you know, this man really hypnotized me. I didn't know it. I must have slept through it or something but he did it. And so anyhow, I stopped reading right then because I didn't want to, I still had in my mind that he was putting stuff in my mind that wasn't supposed to be there. So I didn't read it on there because I didn't want to remember it. I wanted to remember it on my own, what I wanted, I guess. Now, I know he didn't put nothing in my mind because this friend that I had, we good friends, you know, we make moonshine together and all that for years, fish together. And, you know, I knew he wouldn't let him mess me up like that. I would him, but he wouldn't me. So I started reading some of this and I said, well, I'm not gonna read it. Well, when the book came out, it was supposed to come out in September, but it came out in July. Come out earlier. So Philip was gonna pull it off the market. Well, when he did, there'd already been a few copies sold and everybody was wanting it then. So we put it back on. I guess just good business. I didn't care personally if he sold a book or not. I'm not into this for no money. Or it helps now, it feeds a fishing habit. But when this book came out in July, you know, I lost my train of thought there. Anyhow, I didn't realize that I had been hypnotized, so I was doing some podcasts. And the first time that it hit me what had happened during this hypnosis, Linda Moulton Howe, she is kind of an investigator and all. I was doing a podcast with her. Now, buddy, she is dead serious when she talks to you. She's relentless. She don't back up for nothing. So I was talking. She's a very nice lady, but she's dead serious about her job. And apparently her job is to find out facts. So she did all this investigation on me. And she come up, she says, well, your father worked for the Atomic Energy Commission, didn't he? I said, yeah. Well, he set off these nuclear devices out in Groom Lake in Area 51, didn't he? Yeah. Well, Bud Hopkins hypnotized you, and here's what he found out. I said, well, I don't want to hear what he found out. But she went ahead and told me anyhow. And apparently I was fishing and kind of recalling what had went back. And this female creature had put a something in my nasal cavity and was trying to get it out. And that's when me and her got into a actual physical confrontation. And I had beat her head against the wall, and she had the big ugly one to beat my head against the wall. So I actually had DNA evidence when I throwed my clothes away, but nobody knew what DNA was then. And I throwed all that evidence away, which I really regret. And I regret that. And I was actually gonna grab her around the neck and jump out with her so I'd have a witness. Now, the aftermath of this, and the good thing about, I never dealt with this. I never told anybody about it, never talked to them about it until the book came out in July. Then this has allowed me to get out and meet people like y'all, to go to a few conferences, and this has been the best one I've been to. I've really enjoyed coming here. So I've enjoyed the people here, I've enjoyed coming, and if I'm invited back, I'll come down here on my own dime again. So that's just the way that I feel, because it's been really nice. Is there any questions that anybody have that they want to ask? Feel free to walk up here and ask them if you want to. Well, I didn't do a good job, then I didn't do a good job. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Did they tell you what you had up your nose, or did you ever get that checked?
No, apparently they had taken it out, and that's where all the blood and all had come from. And that's why the fingers was going in back to the throat and it was hurting so bad. But I figured, now I don't know this for sure, but we lived in a small house and me and my brother shared a bedroom. And back in the timeline that I remember when Kennedy was assassinated, my brother woke up crying one night and he said, there's a ghost blowing in your ear. And well, that scared me right then, because when you're 6 or 7 years old, you don't want a ghost blowing in your ear. But I'm thinking that maybe something could have happened then. I'm not for sure about that. You know, I'll tell you right now, till this day, I don't know what happened to me. I don't know if it was aliens or maybe something the United States was playing with or Russia. I feel like it was an object from outer space. I feel like it was from another planet maybe. And they say, well, were they good? Were they bad? Well, that's like the people here on earth. You know, you have good people, you have mean people, and you have really mean people, and you have really good people. And I feel like they're the same way. We probably got good aliens, and we got some really bad ones out there. And then we got some that just don't care. And that's what this generation is turning into now, a lot of it. I've noticed, they say the crime rate's really low right here, but I noticed around home and all, it's really picked up. It's almost scary to walk out on the streets. So I think that the race that we're talking about now is probably like the human race. And you got different types of the human race. I know I had a hard time dealing with this when it happened, and I was hunting somebody that went through the same experience. Well, somebody had told me that Betty and Barney Hill went through this in 60-something. Well, I didn't know what an abduction was then, but I wanted to go talk to them. Well, I found out that Barney was dead, but any time back in the 60s that a white woman was married to a black man and she put that much scrutiny on herself to go out and talk about it, because it was just it was an unnoble deal back then as far as everybody was concerned. That would bring a lot of scrutiny on yourself. I said, if this lady wants to put herself through that, this has got to be true, what she went through. So I went and I hunted down Betty Hill, and I spent 3 or 4 days at her home with her, and that was the best decision I ever made in my life. Although she gets out there a little bit sometime, she'll tell you, she taught me how to deal with this and how to ignore the press and the public, because I know what her and Barney went through was a lot worse than what I was, and not because of the abduction, but because of the situation they was in even before there. And my prayers stretched out to her. And I also seen when Colonel Marcel was on his deathbed, I was working in Houma, Louisiana, and I got a call from a young lady come out to see me, and she said, Colonel Jesse Marcel wants to see you, the old man. I said, who is that? I didn't know what Roswell was back then. And she said, he wants to talk to you. So I went to see the man. You know, anybody on their deathbed, you kind of want to do, if that's their last wish. So I went and sat down and talked to him. And I was intrigued for 2 or 3 hours. And the biggest thing he wanted to say was, I'm on my deathbed, and what happened at Roswell was true. I've held this under all my life, but this actually happened. And I believe the man. There's no doubt in my mind that the man, why would you lie when you're dying? I wouldn't. Now, if I go to die and y'all catch up with me, I'll lay down, I'm gonna tell you the same story. You know, so this is true. Yes, sir. I pray to Jesus all the time to help me out. Yes, sir, I did. I didn't pray out loud, but I prayed to myself. And then I feel bad because I did add a few little dirty words in my mind too. But I'm a very religious person, and I love God and Jesus, and that's just the way that it is, and that's the way it always will be.
Have you had any other moments of loss of time other than the one on the island?
No, sir, I hadn't. And I pray I don't never have. That's a scary situation. What was even more scarier, when I got home, that guy asked me, he said, "Did you catch any fish?" I said, "No, I didn't." Well, we was standing at the boat, and he just reached and flipped the cooler open. It was full of fish. Now, how they got there, I don't know, but I know I didn't catch them. Unless I dreamed them in there.
Calvin, there were some other witnesses that have come forward since that happened to you, isn't there?
Yes, sir. There was several more witnesses that come forward, even since I've been up here. And there was this Miss Blair lady that came forward. Her and her husband was going out to work on the crew boats that night. And she actually seen the craft and what appeared to be the subjects, you know, that was in there. So she come forward with all that. And another thing, somebody asked me, why didn't the bridge tender see what was going on? Well, Dr. Heineck went to see the bridge tender and the sheriff department. He took the sheriff department with him. And when they got there, this guy was sitting in a recliner with his back to the water over there, sound asleep. And they had to wake him up and ask him what was going on. Well, he thought it was somebody wanting to get a boat under there or something, because they'd call him on the radio and let him in. And then the Rolling Stones magazine, the Rolling Stones did an article. They said, well, why didn't you get caught on a camera out there? You know, they got shipyards, they got these cameras. Well, hell, 1973, there wasn't no cameras. You know, nowadays you can't go anywhere without being on camera, not in people's yard. But in 1973, no cameras, no cell phones, nothing going on like that. So, you know, that's a lot of it. Yes.
I was wondering, you said something about, did you find out about the bell inside your throat that was hanging a little bit, touching your throat or your little bell?
Well, I think it just got real irritated, because it took it 4 or 5 days to, everybody knows that little hangy-down thing. It'll swell up, it's tonsils or something, I don't know what they are. But it took 4 or 5 days for that to go down. And another thing, my eyes, I really didn't get good vision back for 3 or 4 days after that. They did check him and verified it in the hospital.
Did they tell you what it was? What happened? What caused it?
It was like what welders get, which is a common thing in Jackson County. From bright lights and all, you have a lot of shipyard workers and they weld. But this was caused strictly, I think, from the lights of the craft, because Charlie also had them and he wasn't around much welding that day.
If you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone, please.
Yes. Okay.
Just a quick question. You think you could go back a few slides? Because I know you had some drawings of the creatures.
Sure I
some
can.
depictions, and you kind of went over it, but I would love some more description on it.
All right, I'll back this thing up. This one right here is what Charlie and Larry Flint figured out. It's not one of mine, but it's one that Charlie did right shortly after. This is actually my artwork here, and I think I did a good job on it.
The girl or the guy?
No, that's the guy. See them old hands? Yeah.
Yes, speaking of Charlie, earlier you said that you had been elevated over, like, I think, like the marsh grass.
Right.
And was Charlie also elevated at the same time? And then when you made it inside the craft, was he in there with you? Did you see anything, hear anything of Charlie?
Well, he was elevated, and I know he was headed toward the craft, but when I get in there, I didn't see nothing else, so, you know, he says it was in there and his word's good enough for me. Because I know it's hard to believe, so.
We have a question over here, Calvin. Give me a
Okay.
second. I don't walk as fast as I used to.
None of us do.
Yes, sir. You were mentioning that you got hypnotized,
Yes,
and the reports of that hypnotism was the report of, or the notes of the doctor of Bud Hopkins, that it's a recollection of what happened in the craft.
yes, ma'am.
was there any notes about what happened during the time lapse between the time that you started fishing at 11 a.m. to what happened till the time that you woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning?
You know, to be honest with you, I've never read it, so I don't know, but it's in the book, and I'm pretty sure it's some notes in there in the book. I didn't want to read it because I just didn't want to read it, I guess.
You know, I know.
We have a question over on this side, Calvin.
Okay. Oh, that might be my drawing right there. Because it got him uglier than the other one. Now, I did draw that. Yes.
Hi, thanks for talking with us today. You
Oh.
said that you had gotten medical attention regarding the abrasion that you had in your throat.
Yes.
Would it be possible to get those medical records released for the historical record?
We are trying very hard right now to, my publisher, Philip, he's trying hard to get a hold of all this stuff he can. But what a lot of the problem is, in 2005, we had a hurricane and everything flooded. It had 20 foot of water on the coast. So the records was not on the computer, they was on paper files, hard files.
Ever since that incident, have you had any flashbacks of what transpired as far as now that you remember something a little bit more since that incident?
I do have flashbacks, and more so since I was doing the book, because up until the book I was trying to forget about them, but then I wanted to remember them while I was writing the book, so I'd be sure and put a thorough detail in them. So yeah, I did have flashbacks.
We have a question over here somewhere. Oh, right there.
Also wanted to thank you for sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you mighty welcome. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being here.
The one thing I wanted to ask is, now when you see a no trespassing sign,
I don't trespass. They're there for a reason. Yeah, that taught me a good lesson. I think it taught Charlie one too.
I appreciate the observations that you were doing. When you were in the ship, were there any common smells that or anything that probably got your attention, like when she shoved her fingers down your throat?
Well, Mississippi don't smell good anyway. And especially on the coast where there's old dead fish and pogie plants and all that around. So, you know, that smell kind of drifted into that ship. I'm sure they was ready to leave too. And I probably had my own personal smells that they wanted to get away from.
Yes, when you were saying earlier that you had the incident when you were 6 or 7 years old with your brother mentioning seeing something, put something in your ear in the evening, and you also mentioned your father working for the Atomic Energy Commission.
Correct.
So do you think maybe that's all connected somehow, or is that just kind of, you're throwing that out there as possibilities?
I'm just throwing it out there, just something to say to kill a little time.
That's an honest answer, Calvin.
Yes.
We have a question over here.
Yes, and thank you for being here and sharing your information
Oh,
with
you
us.
mighty
We really
welcome.
appreciate it. I want to know, when she stuck her finger, supposedly the she, in your throat, how did it feel? Like a human hand, or what was it? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I well remember it going in my throat, but as far as the texture on how she felt, I can't describe that, because when she pinched me on the cheek like my grandmother would or something, you know, there wasn't no feelings to it, wasn't no warmth in her hands or anything, and she sure didn't have a warm heart.
Okay, and what about when they injected your arm to calm you? Did it leave a mark on your arm?
I have 2 marks on my arm.
You still have them?
You'd have to look, but you can see them.
Were they small, like a needle, or what kind of marks
Well,
were they?
the way the doctor explained it to me, in the military, when they're giving massive shots, they use air. And they got like a gallon jug of medicine, and they shoot you with that, with air. And it was explained to me that it was kind of like there instead of like a needle puncher.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one here, and then
Really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
Talking about the he and the she.
Yes, sir.
Did both of these individuals appear to be the same? We have a drawing of the man. Did she look pretty much identical?
No, I actually have an artist that I'm paying to help me right now to sit down and do a sketch of it. I'm planning on releasing that, putting it out on the news in public or where people can see it. But she was more human looking. The only thing, she didn't really have hair or nothing. Now, I think he was a machine, to be honest with you, the way that he moved and all. He was taking commands from somebody. Now, whether it was her or somebody else, I don't know.
So it's just these two individuals?
Right.
Okay. And size, is he larger than her, smaller?
He was probably 5 foot tall and bulky. His neck went down to his shoulders. He really didn't have that. Now, she, if you drank enough, she would have been an attractive looking woman. So, I hadn't had that much to drink that night. And I'm glad I didn't, because I'd be in jail.
But look humanoid.
Right, exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, first I want to just say thank you for being a very entertaining speaker. I'm pretty sure a lot of us have seen a lot of UFO conversations and all that. This is by far the most entertaining one I've had in my entire life. Going back to the telepathic connection, did it exist just when you guys were touching, or did it exist when you guys had separation?
No, it existed just when she was there touching, you know, had her fingers down my throat and all. And, you know, that's the only time, you know, I heard her say anything.
Thank you very much, sir.
I should have bit her fingers off. I'd have had evidence
All right, we have a question back here and then another one. Somebody back here had one first.
This is actually the place where this happened, what's showing there.
Hi, good morning. Did Charlie and you ever share your experiences? Did he have the same experience as you did? Maybe the same, I don't know, did they put anything down his throat, anything like that?
You know, I'm very regretful that I didn't talk to Charlie, but I was mad with him because I thought he's the one that told the media about it. So we kind of shut communications off between each other. I've seen him 2 or 3 times, you know, after that, but we didn't talk about this. So no, man, we didn't. I should go home and read his book.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for coming. I do have a question. Going back to the telepathic encounter, as far as the voice itself, was the voice robotic? Was it soothing? Was it harsh? How would you describe it?
It was soothing. I mean, it was maybe I was just so happy to hear she wasn't gonna kill me that it was soothing. But you know, it was one that, you know, you wanted to hear.
We're going to take about 2 more questions and then break for lunch. So
Good deal.
Here's one back here.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for being here, and it's very interesting, you know, but the story you've told. But mine is an observation question.
Yes, sir.
I saw some of the pictures of the craft. If you can go back to the craft.
Sure.
And you said you worked at a shipyard, so you're used to seeing metal bolts, rivets.
Right.
Okay. Can you recall the material that craft was made? Could you see rivets, bolts, or was it just one sheet metal? What did that? Can you describe?
Well, I can't recall because one reason the lights were so bright, you wouldn't be able to tell if you seen rivets or anything. Now, when I got on the inside, the one thing that I noticed was no light fixtures. the lights was coming out of the paint. And I've never even heard of that, even, you know, from the military, what they build in drones and stuff. But, no, I can't recall because of the bright lights.
So, going, like, since it's been many years that this incident happened, thinking back on it and your encounter in the craft and how they were putting their fingers down your throat, in your opinion, do you think it was more of them trying to examine you? Or do you think they were trying to put something in you or probe you in that sense?
Well, you know, it's a bad feeling to think that you're gonna have a probe in you, and somebody be able to keep up with you. But I feel like it was more of an examination than it was anything. You know, if we caught one of them, we'd probe them and examine them and everything else, and I feel like they would do the same to us, which isn't right. You know, I don't know why the government can't come to the decision, let them land here, let's shake their hand and we just sit there and talk about this, instead of grabbing them up and dragging them off to an airport hangar somewhere and doing whatever they do to them. I wouldn't even want to know what they do to them.
One more question, anybody? Okay.
During the probing, I know you don't have the clothes anymore, but did you have any bleeding?
Very much bleeding. My, back in, when this happened, I used to wear just old white t-shirts during the day to work in because it was so hot and humid. And this thing was drenched in blood. Not only my blood, but her blood. It was black. They bleed kind of black looking blood. And, you know, I was put up with, and I've had to live with this a long time, and that's why I didn't want to talk. So, you know, I had DNA, I just threw it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are so happy to have Calvin with us today.
Thank y'all. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the whole trip. I enjoyed the festival last night. Most of all, I've enjoyed meeting the people here. Y'all have been so good to me, and y'all been good to me, and thank y'all.
Calvin, I'm honest when I tell you that you're in the top 3 in 8 years of the best speakers we've ever had.
Well, great.
So we appreciate you.